Welcome to the Big Time Thinking Podcast. This content is brought to you by taking thousands of arrows right in the back and doing something about it. With winking at girls in the dark.
Get them to sign on the line which is dotted.
And get ready to scale your sales, your dealership, your business, your life, your family, and your friends with Big Time Thinking.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.
Without further ado, here is the founder and CEO of Big Time Advertising, Terry McCauley.
Oh, have I got your attention now?
Buckle up. Reality starts right fucking now.
All right, here we go. We're back and better than ever. Just back off of NIADA, National Independent Auto Dealers Association. And I guess it's a Monday and time to do another podcast. What's funny is in podcast world, we skipped a couple weeks because we'll do a couple of these in a row. But excited to do the next podcast. I have our first guest, first time we've ever had a guest on a Big Time Thinking podcast. And I have with me today Brad White. Brad White is a very important person to me at the moment. He is actually our new Director of Sales at Big Time Advertising and Marketing, our ad agency. And Brad White comes to us from JD Byrider, which is a national organization that's involved in the buy here, pay here business. And our agency has somehow worked its way into representing a lot of dealers from JD Byrider. And I'll let Brad kind of tell the story in his own words. But Brad had worked for JD Byrider for 12 years, extremely loyal, and our agency kept scaling. And we were looking for someone to take over some of these clients and help me continue to grow our agency and focus on the sales side. So I'm going to let Brad kind of introduce himself. I got him here. Now listen, Brad's a little pissed off at me a little bit because he does, this isn't his world, and it's not really my world either. But we're gonna make him do this, and he'll be fine. So we'll pick on you, all right? Don't be a little bitch, and you'll be fine.
Sounds fair.
All right, you'll figure this out, and we won't hold it against him that he is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. I mean, that's real. That's how creative. That's why I'll handle the creative and he'll handle the sales. Anybody that's a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, really, we know you grew up in the '80s, and there wasn't a lot of choices. There was 2 television stations. Right, either got the Steelers or the Raiders, and maybe somewhere in the Midwest.
Sometimes you got the Bears.
Yeah, the Bears. That's about how creative Brad is. He didn't realize there's a whole big world out there. No, I'm just giving you some.
I like winning, so that works out well in this.
Touche. I'm a Colts fan, and the Steelers have done a lot more winning. But Brad, real quick, kind of tell us your background, how you got into where you were at with JD Byrider, and then we'll get more into some of the stuff I want to ask you because I think there's a lot you can teach us and some stuff I can maybe teach you too. But how did you get into working for Byrider, and what was your daily tasks? What did you do?
Yeah, for sure. So long story, I actually drove a beer truck for 5 years right out of school. Realized that was not for me once I fell asleep driving home from a little town in Indianapolis, or outside Indianapolis. So that's when I started looking for a different venture. I actually found the rent-to-own industry.
Hold up. So you're like Homer Simpson? You drove a beer truck?
I absolutely like Homer Simpson.
No shit. That's awesome. So I think I did know that now that I think about it because you have told me this.
Absolutely.
What beer brand? That's important.
So I worked for a company that actually handled all Miller and Coors products.
Awesome.
And all imports as well. So I had a little bit of everything.
Winter chick. So I'm one of the few people who's in St. Louis, Missouri, and likes Miller Lite. So that works for me. All right, go ahead. Sorry to cut you off, but that's how it works with ADHD and big time thinking.
You're good.
All right.
So with that, found myself at the local rent-own company, Rent-A-Center, actually. Worked for them for about 5 years, and I got a call one day from an old market manager, and he had went over to JD Byrider, told me a lot about the company, wanted me to come in, kind of blew him off a few times. And then, of course, like we all have, we have that bad week where the boss calls you up and reams you and tells you how terrible you are. And I decided to go ahead and give my old market manager a call. So what I did, I gave him a call, went in, spoke with him. He told me all about JD Byrider. They were a family-owned business back then. It was prior to them being bought out by the equity group that purchased them years ago. And again, this is 12 years ago that I went in there, and they pretty much sold me. And decided to go work for them. Started off as basically a measly little finance assistant because I had never really worked in that lending industry before.
Yep.
So decided to do that. From there, worked my way up, held probably 10 or 11 different titles. Was a finance manager, sales manager, regional manager, so on and so forth. The last 5 years of my tenure was a franchise consultant, and was able to really go out, meet the owners.
Now, how many franchises do they have?
So 127 franchises. The rest of them are company stores.
Some are coming, some are going.
Yeah, some come, some go. And it's probably even more than that, actually. It's probably about the 140-ish range with franchises. But the nice piece was I worked for corporate for the first 8 years. A lot different, of course. You have your rules, regulations, and it's a lot larger because you have more stores, so there's more procedures.
Okay, so not to interrupt you, but this is kind of where I actually want to go. It's interesting that you kind of got into that a little bit. My whole career, my whole life has been on the dealer side, right? And you know this, selling, and then working my way into being a sales manager and general manager, and now as an agency representing on the dealer side. And one thing I'm glad to have here, and eventually I want to get Dave Johnson in here, who was a factory rep for Chrysler, and one of my favorite reps of all time. And we always had this fun give and take, in emails and stuff. And if you didn't know us, you think, man, they hate each other, but we didn't. But what I'm perplexed by, and this podcast is geared towards dealers growing their industry, growing their dealerships, but it can be applied to any business, because I can imagine if if I sell desks for a living and my manufacturer, everybody has some sort of manufacturer relationship, right?
Absolutely.
And in Byrider world, in case people are listening, they don't understand, when we say buy here, pay here, so their whole model is based on, and you can interrupt me if I get it wrong, their whole model is based on those who cannot get credit at all. They've exhausted. They've gone to dealerships, tried to get what we call traditional financing on a vehicle, and they can't. In many, many ways, these people are typically desperate, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and it's really catered towards, a lot of people have problems in their life. They have a life change. They have a divorce, a death in the family, something of that nature. Or maybe they just really screwed up whenever they were young. A lot of us have been there. So it's really giving them that second chance to be able to go in and get something that they need to help themselves, their family, and, and of course, their credit down the road as well.
Okay. So, and that's right. And one thing about JD Byrider, and a lot of you listening are salespeople as well. We've all done what we call special finance. Even if you've been at a Dodge, Ford store, right? You've dealt with a customer who has not stellar credit. They're struggling. They have bankruptcies on there and stuff that Brad alluded to. But what I want to spend some time focusing on is, one, I want to give kudos to Byriders, because there's been a ton of dealers get in the buy here, pay here business, and there have been a ton of them go out of business and go bankrupt. Right or wrong? Absolutely. Right? We have seen, and people say, oh, they're taking advantage of those with bad credit. And let me tell you something, there's probably not anything more risky. And I tell this to people all the time. You take $100 and loan it to somebody you know has never paid a loan back in their whole life, right? And you're going to give them the 100th chance. Are you willing to be that person? Right. Okay? So the kudos to Byrider, in my opinion, is they've got a model that has worked. Now, I've seen it change, and you have too, but what I want to ask you, I guess, I want to start out with coming from the factory side, and I call it factory because I'm a Dodge guy, coming from corporate side, okay? Because Byrider's a little different model. You don't produce a car. They were all used or pre-owned. But what are the two most important things, your takeaways in 12 years from the corporate side, the stuffy side, and we'll get into all that, that you think the best dealers, what do they have, and what are the worst dealers, what do they not have? Okay. I'm putting you on the money.
No, it's fair. Two things that make us successful or not is leadership and accountability. Now, whether that's you're leading your team or you're being led, along with you're being held accountable or you're holding others accountable. Those are the two things that really define success from that level. And the reason I say that is I've seen a lot of leaders, or I should say managers, right? There's a difference. There are leaders, and there are managers.
No doubt. So interrupt. Let people understand a little bit more about me. Leadership comes to me naturally. I'm a natural leader. I think this is what you're talking about, and I have to work at being a manager.
Absolutely.
Right? And to me, leadership's where we're going, how are we going to get there? When energy's down, I'm an energy guy, right? Management is the day-to-day paperwork, making sure your shit don't stink.
Correct.
Right? When you turn something into the office, it better fucking fly. Right? everybody has one or the other, maybe typically as a natural gift, and they got to work at the other. So that would be a whole nother great podcast, but not to interrupt. It just got me going.
No, absolutely. But one thing I look at too, and it's been my experience with being in that space for a long period of time, all the different people I've met, all the people I've seen come and go, because there is a lot of turnover, not necessarily in Byrider, but just within that space, right? In the automobile space, a lot of people jump from job to job. They want to see where they can make the next amount of money, and maybe it can be more. But with that, you have managers that like to dictate. They like to dictate and delegate, is what I state. They're not willing to jump in the trenches with you and show you how it's done. They just want to tell you how it's done, and then they expect that to happen.
So you're speaking to a lot of things I innately believe. Okay, I never took a class for this. I'm not someone who likes to sit in classes long anyway. But you're so right. So when he says dictate, there's two. We all have worked for that manager, right? One of my favorite sayings, and I think we've already put it on our Facebook page, is the non-doers typically like to sit around and talk about the doers.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the non-doers like to wax philosophically about how the doers are doing. It takes effort and risk to be a doer. To be a non-doer, you ain't gotta do shit.
Always, yeah.
Okay, so now it's funny. You said some make it and some don't, and I'm writing down what I think you're gonna say, and I'm hoping you're gonna say. But I'm curious as to what's the number one reason a manager or a leader fails?
Their boss.
Okay, elaborate on what you mean. So you're referring to a general manager now, or an owner possibly, if we're talking about a sales manager,
Absolutely.
or a finance manager. Okay, so the boss. So why do they?
So it really goes back to the old saying, and I believe this 100%. Being in the working space for the last 28 years, I started early.
And I keep forgetting Rent-A-Center is the same business model.
Yes, same
Very
subprime,
similar.
same customer base, all of that. But one thing I've definitely realized, and I'm 100% with the saying, is people don't quit jobs, they quit bosses, right? Or they don't quit companies, they quit bosses. Now, that's not the case every single time, because a lot of people go somewhere where they can make more money. They may have loved their boss, but they can make more money elsewhere. Totally understand
That's
that.
advancing the career.
Absolutely.
I think everybody applauds that.
Absolutely.
And if they don't, fuck them.
There's a problem.
I've been around guys, when I was a sales manager, Brad, not to cut you off, if I had a salesperson come to me, dude, you've trained me well, I've got an opportunity to be a sales manager somewhere else, dude, I high-fived them. I can't have enough of those that I can go, hey, man, those are all guys I train now. They're all leaders of dealerships.
Absolutely.
That's the ultimate kudos, right?
That helps your success by them.
Yeah, and I've
successful.
seen other managers come in, and even owners to me, depending on who I work for, well, that's bullshit. Why is he leaving? I'm like, and I think they get it wrong.
They do. They try and hold people back versus helping them move forward in their career.
Okay, so I kind of cut you off, but what were you saying about these bosses?
So with that, whenever you have somebody that can't lead you, that you can't look up to or learn from, you have a problem. Who wants to work from the person that doesn't teach you anything, doesn't mentor you, doesn't care about you? You're just a number. You're just a seat filler. You learn nothing. You're going nowhere. Right?
Yep. So
we all have to be led.
No question. So, and that's what big time thinking is. And I know, how many of my podcasts have you listened to?
All of them so far.
You really have?
I have.
Okay. And I've been listening to them too. I'll tell you who, the biggest critic of my podcast is? My fucking wife.
The same person's the biggest critic of your life.
Of everything in my life, right? She's like, your audio could sound better. And then like, you're starting to talk better. You're starting to make more sense when you talk. So it's kind of funny. But what I guess what I was getting at is parenting is a lot like being a manager.
Absolutely.
There's shitty parents and there's good parents, right? And I'm someone who never tell them their face. I got good friends. I think to myself, man, they're a shitty parent, right? And to me, a shitty parent, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, there's what I call DEFCON, different levels, right? Scale of 0 to 10. 10 being the worst, 0 being no big deal. Too many people, and I think this applies in business too, everything becomes a 10.
Correct.
And you got to reserve 10s for when it's time to get fucking pissed.
Right.
There's only occasionally in my career that I've stood up and nearly almost turned the desk over, right? That's a 10. And for me, and everybody's got to decide them differently, for me, those are like ethical things, right? Like if someone stole from me.
Right.
Or things I know I can't get over, or someone attacked my integrity as a person, I'll defend those type of things.
To mess with your money or your family.
Right. But so you bring it up. How much training did Byrider offer salespeople?
So the nice thing about that is they do have a program where they will send that salesperson through training, live training, so classroom training, along with what the software they use on track, and they go through a full detailed sales program.
Okay, so I wasn't trying to steer our podcast that way, and it's my fault for not asking.
But
so of all your training, you probably know where I'm going now. What percentage of the training is geared towards salespeople versus what percentage is geared towards training managers?
So that's what I was going to say. So a lot of it is teaching that salesperson, teaching that sales manager how to work the system, how to handle customers, how to so on and so forth, right?
Right.
The one thing where we always miss out, and this just isn't JD Byrider or anywhere else, because this is where it becomes personal. You have to train your managers on how to manage people.
Right.
Okay. And how to lead people. The one thing that we really have a problem with, and it's not just in business, it's in society, is having leaders. People that want to lead others to be successful, along with people that want to be successful and be led.
See, so you bring up a great point, but you know why leaders, so what's scary is how many leaders we have within our own dealership sometimes, and we hold them back. Right? Leadership can happen from your top sales guy if you got a good one.
Always.
Right? Hey guys, come on, let's go straighten up cars. Hey guys, come on, let's go key them up. That's a leader. And I've seen managers sometimes, and I mean this, hold back salespeople from leading. Who cares where it's coming from if it's good leadership?
Agree.
Right? And not knowing the difference. But what I was saying is, so when I was in Chrysler forever, so I understood the DCA, Chrysler Academy, all these online tests. We're going to make you better. You got to get certified. Every one of them was based on product knowledge, right? And for salespeople, how to sell. Mm-hmm. But I think, and this is my biggest pet peeve, and listen, I've probably been in more Byrider stores than most employees at corporate at Byrider. Is that probably fair?
That's fair, yeah, absolutely.
I get around, right? And I go visit these stores. And I've always said, if you want to understand your customer, go spend time where they're at, okay? So that's why I go visit as many stores as I can. But and I've seen this over and over with Byrider, and I've seen it in all kinds of dealerships. And you know this because you've been a rep. Who do they always, when they need a manager, one leaves, where's the first place they look?
They always look at their top sales guy, which usually makes the worst manager.
And it's the stupidest thing ever. And I'm honest. I've told salespeople in my own dealership, how do I get to be a manager around here? I said, as long as I'm the GM, it will never happen. You're too good a sales guy. But at least I was honest.
But it's true because they're a 20-car guy, 25-car guy. You lose your manager, you go to that 20, 25-car guy, and now you want him to manage the team. Well, here's the problem. He barely knows how to manage himself sometimes. Now, this isn't every time, but most of the time, 85% of the time, your top sales guy is not a manager. He's not a leader. He knows how to do his job and do his job well, right? Well, with that, what happens is you put that person into a management position, and now you can't even sell any cars because your top sales guy is now a manager.
Yep, and he's even more than that. And I told this to my salespeople. I promise there's certain ones that come to mind who sold a lot of cars from Joe and Skunas. I'll never forget. And if Joe hears this, he'll know it. Terry, how do I get to be a manager around here? And I said, Joe, I'm going to be real honest with you. You're too good a salesperson, and why would we ever take you out of the role you're already excelling in? Too many people think becoming a manager means more money. And a
lot of times it's less money.
Right, and it's more accountability. And it doesn't mean I didn't want Joe to be a manager, right? I didn't. And I would have had no problem if he comes in and says, hey, I got a job at competition across the street. They're going to give me an opportunity to be a manager.
You evaluated his talent, and he was put in the right position for his talent to maximize his opportunity.
Absolutely. Now, there is good news. He is a manager today in the same dealership. After I left, they promoted him. And that's fine. I'm not saying it can't happen. The other thing that sometimes as dealers, we don't pay attention to the real rule. If you work for a major corporation, GE, I shouldn't even say GE anymore because they're not that big. They're struggling. But at Google, they will never promote someone to manage their own peers that they used to be equals with. Right or wrong?
Absolutely. 100%.
And the reason why is, how do you go from being buddy in the huddles to now I'm the boss, right? And so what I want to spend the rest of this time of this podcast on, Brad, and this is back to the training, and I'm sure Byrider's guilty of it too. We train, you got to know the process procedures. And everybody says process procedures are, without those, you can't succeed. And I would say without good people, you can't. Like, it's people first, right? And what makes good people is people that are trained with a capital T. And I can't tell you how many managers I meet today, young ones coming up, and I ask them, how much training did you do on being a manager? What do you? And they always say, well, what do you mean? I said, I mean, how much training have you had? Right? Have you I'm just curious, how much training have you had? And then they'll say, well, what kind of training? I said, have you ever left the building to go get training about sitting in a manager's training? Have you gotten any online? And historically, the answer is no.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so, and I've been a salesperson, and before I was ever a manager, and then before I now even own my own company. We all have illusions of what a manager does when you're a sales guy. Oh man, he's got it good in there. He shuts the door a lot. I see him browsing the internet occasionally. But they don't see the phone calls with the owner at 10 o'clock at night. I always call it the evening report, big from the Lion King, right? The evening report, right? They don't see that, and that's okay. They don't have to, but they have an illusion. Man, if I was just the boss, I wouldn't be so mean if a guy came in 5 minutes late, or whatever their hot button is. That's what I would do as a manager. They have illusions as opposed to empirical data as to this is what you do as a manager. And my biggest pet peeve, and I don't hear you. I've been to a bunch of your guys' 20 groups and conventions. We're all out there trying to learn about digital marketing, and I love digital marketing. But why aren't we spending time on, and I'm on my soapbox, maybe I'm cutting you off, but if this is how our podcast goes, it's fine because it's an important topic. Why aren't we spending time, like you said, how to manage? But we probably ought to learn something about people, right? So people, I've often done this to managers. I ask them, what are the five responsibilities of a manager? Just the historical tasks of a man. They don't know. They're like, what are you talking about? Right? I'm an ad agency. I walk in, they go, hey, we have a hard time. This is a manager. I have a hard time hiring people. Can you help us? And what do you think? Of course I can help you. I'm an ad guy. I'll put an ad out. But when I was a manager, because I got trained on it, I never once had to ask people how to hire someone. Because guess what one of the functions of being a manager is?
Learning how to hire people.
And fire people.
You got it.
Right? So I don't know. Is this even going on, Corbett? You just left. Do they just, is it something they just talk about, but then it gets shelved? What's going on?
Well, I believe that with them, I mean, they have their own processes that they do. They have a lot of good ones.
Right.
I won't take anything away.
And this isn't about Byrider.
No, 100%.
But I've never sat on that corporate side. I've always been the us versus them type deal. And I'm curious, what it's like to sit in that circle.
I really think a larger challenge is whenever you go out to franchises, whenever you see how they struggle with their management. In every business, there's an owner. Okay. Now, is that owner active or sitting on the sideline and has somebody in their place to run that, whether it's a dealership, whether it's a restaurant, whatever it is, right? Are they an active owner or not? And that's the first piece. Okay.
Yep.
But with that is when we talk about training, we talk about management and that. And whenever it comes down to people, one thing we have to realize with people is everybody learns differently. Okay. For me, I like to see it and then I have to do it. That's how I learn.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have a lot in common.
Yeah. There's others that have to read about it. And if they read it, they can memorize it.
YouTube was the greatest thing that ever happened to Terry McCauley.
Me too.
Okay.
Now I can Google how do I, change oil in my son's Raptor, and I know how to do that.
I can replace a toilet, and I don't know shit about mechanical anything.
We can do anything nowadays with YouTube. But with that, we never look at how does this person learn best? How are we going to get the biggest benefit out of them by the way that they learn? That's the way we want to teach them. If I have somebody that likes to read things, read the material, and then put it together, that's fine, right?
No problem.
But here's the problem is, if I just tell them how to do it, they'll never get it put together.
Right.
Right? Now, for me, if I'm putting something together...
But see, so that brings up something else. I think this is inherent with younger, I don't want to get into this whole thing, but sometimes why are people afraid to fail? Right? You said to do it, and they're not problem solvers. They'll call and have someone fix it right away. I can't tell you when I started this agency, and it's still to this day, how many times I've sat here till 10, 11 o'clock at night to do something that a professional in this industry probably could do in 2 seconds. They'd be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Because you need to learn it.
Because and where's their pride? Now, granted, I would ask, but if my boss ever said, hey, I need you to line up all the cars, I would never have gone, hey, how do you guys do that here?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a bad example, but there's none of this giddy up, like go figure it out myself. And I'm glad you brought this up because I think this is big. A couple takeaways that I know for sure. My biggest pet peeve is managers aren't doing one-on-ones daily, right? So some people, they've changed the term. Now it's the huddle. Like, where's our daily huddle, right? Which I hate the word huddle because I always said in the dealership, for me, 2 or 3 people are gathered, that's a huddle.
Right.
And I call that the research and development department because they're never standing around talking good about your dealership.
No.
No one ever sits around and goes, dude, they pay us way too fucking much.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, you see your commission voucher?
Oh,
What
yeah.
the fuck? Awesome. Dude, and you know what I love about Macaulay? He always puts way too much in our trades, dude. He's the greatest manager ever. So I always broke huddles up. So that's there's another lesson. Managers, do they even, and this, what's called a hyper awareness. When you're at that desk, when I was desking deals, or say you were in there visiting me as a rep, my eyeballs, I had a hyper awareness. People are like, do you ADHD? No, dude, I got a customer sitting over there with one of my sales guys and I don't want to see what the fuck they're doing right now. Right? And they don't have that hyper awareness. They don't know like how long that person's been sitting there. Does that make sense what I'm getting at?
Absolutely.
So,
well, and just to piggyback off that, I mean, what you stated was one-on-ones, right?
Yep.
That is something I've preached for years. That's where you get the, first of all, you want to have a good relationship with your boss. Everybody wants to have a good relationship with their boss. Unless they're just a complete prick, then you want nothing to do with them.
Right. And I've had those.
And you're probably not going to work for them for
they'll
long.
wear you out.
But with that, something else that cracks me up too is whenever you talk to somebody and say, hey, are you doing your one-on-ones? Are you doing any coaching? Or, are you bringing them in and having that one-on-one time with them? And they say, yeah, absolutely. When do you do that? Well, I do that on Wednesdays or Thursdays.
Yeah.
What the hell? Wednesday or Thursday? The week's gone by then. How are we setting
I always just
expectations?
rephrase the question. So how often do you do your daily one-on-one?
Yeah.
Right? And then they still answer it. I go, okay, let me do that again. How often should a daily one-on-one happen? Right?
Well, they probably still get it wrong.
No. And I'm here to tell you one of the reasons I feel like I always was able to beat month over month consistently and scale dealerships, and that's what we're really after with big time thinking, is I knew my daily one-on-one was more important than sitting there for hours on end, fighting with the office over a recap on a deal because they didn't give me $400 worth of gross.
Right.
How many times have you seen that happen? This deal's bullshit. I'm getting fucked on my, right? And they spend all their time there as opposed to, you know what? Those 9 sales guys I'm managing, they pay my wages. And I'm going to spend time with that guy. Hey, dude, what's happening? Where are you struggling? And I always use what I call like soft reports, success, opportunities, failures, and threats. And I manage those. Successes, they love to tell me, and I really didn't give a shit about successes, and I didn't really give a damn about failures. But I want them to know, hey, failure, all right, I gave him a chance to vent. But I managed to opportunities and threats. An opportunity, if I could put it in the win column and sell them, I knew I sold more. Am I right on this?
Absolutely.
And if they were a threat, if I could stop it from being a failure, I'm going to win a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
And so Brad, I appreciate coming in, and actually, we're almost done with 30 minutes. This is easier than you thought, isn't it?
A lot quicker, yeah.
It's easier than you thought, right?
Absolutely it is.
And you've hit it out of the park because you and I could go on and on. And I didn't know where, truth be told, we sat down, we didn't know what topic we were going to do, did we?
No, we didn't.
And you were worried about it. But I think we just did it right there. Today, it's leadership and managers. There's 2 different qualities. We talked about leadership the most, but the key, and there's opportunities here for more and more podcasts. Guys, today's lesson, if anything, and Brad, you put yours in there too, it's like we've all got to start holding our managers more accountable. And not, when I say accountable, not just how many they sell, but then also, are you training them?
Right.
You can't tell the manager sucks if he's never been trained.
Exactly.
Is that fair?
100%.
And how many times has a manager gone and sat in another dealership and sit next to a successful manager and just watch them? But I know what every dealer tell me, oh, we're too busy, you can't. Bullshit, man.
You're never too busy to learn.
And here, so then I decided to start my own business, something the stupidest thing any motherfucker could ever do, right? And say, oh, I can do this myself. And now I own my own business. I had, just like I told you, the salesperson having premonitions about being a manager. Same thing. Oh, if I was a dealer principal, this is what I'd do, right? But I've never had to pay with cash flow and wonder how the hell you make payroll on Friday, right? Because a deal didn't fund that you thought was going to fund.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, so but guess what I've had to do? I've gone and joined my own 20 group with other business managers. I'm like, I got a lot to learn here. I better get on this deal.
And I bet you were busy, but you still did it.
Yeah, because I knew I'd fail if I don't.
Absolutely.
Right? So I'm glad you came. I think I'm excited to have you on our team, and I hope that we both, consistently always agree training's key. We can't spend enough time going out there, and we create leaders in our own organization, because if we do, our dealers are going to succeed, Brad. And that's what I want. I want any dealer we talk to sell more than they did the month before.
I agree. Just always, just for everybody out there, remember, be a leader, lead your team, be the one that wants to be the best and make your team the most successful. Your team will be successful as long as you have the right people on board that know what they're doing and respect you, because they can mentor. You can be their mentor. but just lead them. Don't just manage them.
Awesome, dude. Thanks again for coming in here and doing this. Not that you had a choice.
True. True.
All right, we're wrapping up here. Hey, listen, guys, I think we're approaching our fifth episode. I don't know how iTunes counts them. Sixth one, I guess. They count the intro as one, so I'm always off. But here's the deal. I want to say thanks to everybody listening. Thanks for those sharing. I can't get more shares and enough downloads. If you are streaming it directly, make sure you hit that little download button. We're now on Spotify. I think the last time I told you we would be on Spotify. We're on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud. You're going to find us everywhere. Like our Facebook page. I'm dying for more comments and feedback of what you want to hear us talk about. We're going to grow this podcast as best we can into some numbers that we hope that will astonish us. There's only one way, and just like Brad said, guess what I'm doing? I'm studying podcasts. I'm learning from there are some great guys out there doing this, and we will continue to get better. Guys, thanks for listening. Make this week better than last week. Go out there, sell some fucking cars, and kick some fucking ass. Go get it.